In Venezuela, thousands rallied in Bolivar in support of presidential candidate for the Great Patriotic Pole, Nicolás Maduro. In Palestine, Israeli forces committed 4 new massacres against families in Gaza. In China, the search and rescue operations continue for missing people after strong floods in the northwest and southwest of the country. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the Telesur studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the presidential candidate by the Great Patriotic Pole, Nicolás Maduro, was welcomed by the people of the Bolivar state, who expressed their support to his candidacy for the next July 28th elections. Residents from the San Felix community staged a large march in support of the candidacy of the current Venezuelan president as he battles the blockade imposed by the United States and its European allies. Maduro thanked the people for their support to defeat the actions to continue working for the well-being of the nation. Maduro also condemned the intention by the far right of privatizing the country's companies and housing, as they tried it before when they took over the legislative power in 2015.
Do you want a cowardly president who comes to privatize all the companies of Guyana? Do you want a cowardly president who comes to destroy the great housing mission Venezuela? To privatize housing? They already tried it when they won the 2015 election. They forget. The only law they presented in 2016 was to take away the housing of the people and to destroy the great housing mission Venezuela. Who presented it? The hairy rat Julio Borges, Leopoldo Lopez, Capriles, Machado, the same political class as always, but the people on the street prevented it.
Likewise, the presidential candidate affirmed that thanks to Venezuela's relations with the BRICS, the country has been able to guarantee large foreign investments while respecting national sovereignty.
But
the time has come to move on to active and courageous resistance, to the economic offensive, and thanks to the relations I have with the BRICS, investments and technology with capital from India, China and Russia have been signed and secured, respecting our sovereignty. With our socialist model, they have underestimated me greatly. They have underestimated us. But what is being accomplished is by God's grace.
The head of the Venezuela Nuestra campaign command, Jorge Rodriguez, called on the people to mobilize during the closing of the campaign of candidate Nicolás Maduro. During a press conference, the general coordinator of the Venezuela Nuestra campaign command highlighted the massive reception to the candidate Nicolás Maduro by the people of Coro. In this sense, Rodriguez announced that from last Friday until next Thursday, July 25th, they will carry out massive campaign closings in the 33 states of the country.
We have already gone with the candidate, President Nicolás Maduro, to more than 160 cities, towns, villages, hamlets, cities, route. Now we are going to the massive closings to the people taking the capitals, taking the main cities, in huge concentrations for the closings of the campaign, the candidate of the loyalty of the future of the homeland of the candidate Nicolás Maduro.
The head of the Venezuela Nuestra campaign command, Jorge Rodriguez, called on the Venezuela people to take to the streets after the presidential elections of July 28th in defense of peace.
And after the election, all the millions who voted to elect Nicolás Maduro constitutional president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to the streets to defend the vote, to defend peace and enforce respect for the results emanating from the National Electoral Council.
This year, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela is trying a new street-level mobilizing tactic to bring out the vote. Our envoy in Venezuela, Brian Mir, has more.
With less than 2 weeks left before Venezuela's presidential elections, supporters of all 10 candidates are working hard to bring out the vote. The governing Socialist Unity Party has a long history of popular mobilization, but this year they're using a new strategy to bring out the vote for incumbent President Nicolás Maduro, called 1 × 10 × 7.
Every one of us is capable of mobilizing 10 people and convincing them to find 7 more. And during these days, we have to do it in a way that is objective, clear, precise, and disciplined.
Clara, precisa, disciplinada, con eficiencia, con efectividad.
We have to be efficient and effective to re-elect our leader Nicolas Maduro.
Using an old tactic of asking every party member to convince 10 people to vote for him as a starting point, President Maduro is asking them to ask each person they convince to vote for him to try to convince 7 more. The number 70, which is the potential number of votes each person can mobilize using the strategy, is symbolically important. If former President Hugo Chavez were alive today, he would celebrate his 70th birthday on Election Day.
Concientizando a las personas.
I am raising people's consciousness, including my family, my children, my nephews, and my mom, by reminding them what we have achieved and showing them and explaining things that the government is doing now. Not by making up stories, but by telling the truth.
How well is this new 1 times 10 times 7 strategy going to work? The world will find out on July 28th when millions of Venezuelans go to the polls. Brian Mir, Telesur, Caracas.
Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at Telesur English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Saturday, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel hosted Russian State Duma President Vyacheslav Volodin. The Russian officials going on an official working visit. The Cuban head of state described as very significant the presence of the Russian delegation and affirmed that it expresses the excellent state of political, economic, and commercial relations between the two countries. For his part, Volodin conveyed to Díaz-Canel President Putin's willingness to maintain the partnership that both nations have established, as well as the support for the development of relations, plans, and common bilateral projects. Meanwhile, in Haiti, displacements due to violence have increased by 60% in June. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordination Office warns that the social fabric of the Caribbean nation is at risk. UN Humanitarian Coordinator Abdoulaye Sawadogo said violence keeps the social fabric under enormous pressure. As family members are forcibly displaced by gang warfare, families are torn apart, jobs are lost, schools are closed, and health services collapse. At least 362,000 people have been forced to flee their homes since March. The situation has also posed an enormous challenge for humanitarian assistance offices. And in Bolivia, at least 22 people have been killed in a traffic accident on the Tambo Quemado International Highway section in Pacajes province in the La Paz department. According to police sources, it was a head-on collision between a truck and a bus on a highway in the Bolivian Andes. Another 16 people have been injured, 5 of them Chilean nationals, 2 of whom are minors. Rescuers are working to extract the bodies that remain trapped between the vehicles. A preliminary investigation has established that the truck coming from Patacamaya made a prohibited maneuver and overtaking in a highway section where it is prohibited, which caused a collision with the bus bound for Chile along the busy commercial and tourist route that connects the two countries. In Palestine, Israeli forces committed 4 new massacres against families in Gaza during the last 24 hours. Medical sources detail that at least 64 civilians were killed in the bombardment, while 105 other Palestinians are wounded. Ambulance teams are carrying out search and rescue efforts to find the victims trapped under the rubble. Authorities confirmed the number of Palestinians killed by the Israeli aggression has risen to 38,983 victims since October 2023. In the context of the Israeli aggression, 8 civilians were killed and others were wounded during the bombardments of the Israeli occupation against the city of Han Yunis and Rafah and against refugee camps in central and southern Gaza. Also, the Red Crescent confirmed that the Israeli attack on the Shabura refugee camp left at least 3 Gazans dead. Authorities confirmed that 4 more civilians were killed during the Israeli bombardment of the Bureij camp in central Gaza. As the Israeli attacks continue, thousands of Gazans are under the rubble and have not been recovered by the rescue teams. The Israeli army has carried out a series of deadly attacks across the Gaza Strip, leaving hundreds dead and wounded. In the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood in the north, 5 members of the same family were killed. In Jabalia, also in the north, 4 people were killed, 2 of whom were children. The brutal aggression with artillery and fighter jets also hit several families in central Gaza, especially in the Buresh and Nusayrat refugee camps, where several families were completely wiped out. Earlier, a person riding a bicycle was reportedly killed in Han Yunis, south of Gaza, in an absolutely random and disproportionate drone strike. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the only way to stop Israel's genocide in Gaza is to implement the two-state solution. According to Guterres, Palestinians must have their own independent, democratic and sovereign state within the borders prior to the 1967 Six-Day War, in which Israel militarily occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Guterres called on the parties to return to the negotiating table to resolve the conflict in keeping with international law. The Secretary General said the United Nations Assembly has the duty of deciding how to move forward on the legal consequences arising from the ruling of International Court of Justice against Tel Aviv's policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territories. On the other hand, the Slovenian Justice Ministry has welcomed the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories as illegal. In this regard, the Slovenian Justice Prime Minister has called on the United Nations and its member states to take effective measures to fully implement the court's interpretation of international law. This past week, the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel's settlements in Palestinian occupied territories are illegal and that Tel Aviv must stop the genocide as soon as possible. And in Yemen, authorities condemn an Israeli aggression against civilian targets, including the port of Hodeida and the power grid. The Yemeni Armed Forces spokesperson said they would respond to this attack and will continue to fight in support of the Palestinian people.
The Israeli enemy launched a brutal attack on Hodeida Governorate, targeting the power station that supplies electricity to the coastal city of Al-Hodeida with several airstrikes. The attack also targeted Hodeida port and the fuel tanks, all of which are civilian targets. The Yemeni armed forces affirm that they will respond to this blatant aggression and will not hesitate to strike vital Israeli targets. They reiterate their previous statement declaring the occupied area of Jaffa, Tel Aviv as unsafe. The Yemeni armed forces, guided by their committed leadership and supported by the steadfast and resilient Yemeni people, will not cease their supportive operations for our brothers in Gaza, regardless of the consequences or outcomes.
We now have a functional break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly, share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Functional break, don't go away. Welcome back. In China, the search for missing people following floods caused by rains in the northwest and southwest of the country continues. Over 700 professional rescuers and more than 1,500 volunteers are searching for 31 missing people after their vehicles fell into a river following the collapse of a bridge in Jiangxi province. Local authorities say that rainfall has affected the region since early July, causing landslides in 7 counties. According to official reports, over 64,278 people were to have been affected, with 37,597 evacuated for safety reasons. China's Finance and Emergency Management Ministries have allocated over $49 million for relief and recovery efforts in the flood-stricken provinces of Henan, Jiangxi, and Sichuan. In other news, in Nepal, over 2/3 of parliament has backed Ghatak Prasad Uli as new prime minister. The Prime Minister, who belongs to the Communist Party, got the support of the members of his party, the largest in the coalition, and of members of various political parties in Congress. Of the 275 members of the House of Representatives, 188 gave a vote of confidence to Prime Minister Oli, with only 74 votes against him. Oli was appointed Prime Minister of Nepal after the previous coalition government collapsed when his party withdrew its support earlier this month, allowing him to serve in a post for a fourth term. In Bangladesh, over 100 people were killed during student protests since Monday. The government announced a curfew, deployed security forces, and cut off a large part of the country's internet and telephone connections in an attempt to regain control of the country. Students protested in rejection of the current quota system, favoring a group of people who support the Prime Minister. Hospital sources confirmed that the death toll was 105. Among them are security agents and civilians. The UN High Commissioner condemned the repression in Dhaka. On Sunday, the Russian army liberated two towns occupied by Ukrainian forces in Lugansk and Kharkov regions. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that about 1,700 Ukrainian troops were killed in the last 24 hours. In that sense, the ministry detailed that Kiev lost about 520 soldiers in the westward direction, while to the south they lost another 510 troops and about 330 were neutralized in the central region. During the offensive, the air defense systems shot down a Ukrainian helicopter as well as two Hammer-guided bombs manufactured in France and two HIMARS missiles of U.S. manufacture. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the number of deaths from cholera has risen now to 103. At the same time, health authorities report at least 3,600 suspected cases. Nigerian health authorities announced that they are fighting a cholera outbreak that has spread rapidly in 34 states and the federal capital of the country. They call on the population to take the necessary hygiene measures. Authorities also confirmed that the federal government is intensifying its efforts to improve water and sanitation conditions in the country. Finally, experts detail that there are enough vaccines to attend the population, although they warn that immunization against cholera is designed for specific risk groups and the effect of the vaccine diminishes after 3 years of application. On Saturday, Tadej Pogacar won for a fifth time on this year's Tour de France, moving to the brink of a third title with an incredible performance ahead of defending champion Jonas Vingegaard and Remco Evenepoel. With just Sunday's concluding time trial to come, two-time champion Pogacar has a 5-minute, 14-second lead over Vingegaard as he effectively made sure of becoming the first man in 26 years to capture the Giro d'Italia and Tour de France double in the same season. The day's actions culminated on the tough Col de Guyol climb, where Evenepoel's quick step team set the tempo and attacked Vingegaard in an attempt to take second place overall. Instead, Evenepoel dropped around 53 seconds on the Dane, making it less likely the Belgian can claim second place after Sunday's time trial.
If you told me this before the tour, I would not believe it, and yeah, it's just out of this world actually, and yeah, I'm so happy, and I hope I can share this victory today with the teammates and tomorrow. He had some tough days now, and today he showed that he is not easy to crack, and that he's a real fighter. He gave everything today, and yeah, he did really good ride today, and was super strong.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TelesurEnglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.